Well, I'm excited to talk to you about your new VR. It's coming. Is it coming out or is it out already?
It's we're trying to get it on all the platforms, so it's out on Steam and
Okay,
not on the others.
cool. Well, here at Bionic Buzz, we're all about people's passion, man. You're obviously a very talented visual effects animator. You've done a lot of stuff in Hollywood, but I like to know where your passion for that storytelling and creating kind of came from. Was a certain movie inspired it, or something that was just naturally for you as a child?
You mean just overall in storytelling, or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a filmmaker, you know.
Oh yeah, that's actually interesting. So I grew up in like Central California,
Mhm.
and I think so. We grew up like at the edge of town, and our neighbors had lots of land that was just open fields. And so my brothers and I and my sisters, a little bit too, but we just used to like go out and explore like the irrigation ditches and the forests and the rice fields like all around us. And it kind of just
Uh-huh.
became like these worlds that we made up, as we were kind of just, being kids. And so I think that was kind of the beginning of that, making up these worlds and whatnot, that just kind of started for me, where I was like, oh, awesome, today we're, exploring this irrigation ditch, and the next day we're like, submersing ourselves in rice paddies, and we're playing submarines or something like that. So I think my
I love
environment
that.
really brought out some imaginative storytelling from the very
Oh
beginning.
yeah, well, there's a lot of that in Central California. I mean, when I still lived in LA, every time I drive to the San Francisco Bay Area, it was just like, big gaps of nothing in between up that
Yeah, yeah. So are you familiar with Modesto?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So yeah,
That's
home
where we
of
grew up.
George Lucas and me.
I was gonna say.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
That's
actually pretty
cool.
funny. I remember when we had like there's this part called Five Points, where five streets all come together in this massive intersection, and right in the
Mhm.
middle of it, we decided to build like a 57 Chevy for Lucas in honor of him. And we're like, oh, is he gonna come? It would be so cool if George Lucas actually came. And he didn't. But
Oh.
we still got a little shrine to him right there. So
That's cool. Well, I like to talk about some of your Hollywood career before we get into the VR thing. So,
sure,
you were
yeah,
kind
of
of visual
course.
effects animator, coordinator, VX producer for different films and stuff. So, can you talk me some certain scenes that you kind of worked on if I bring up a certain movie, you know?
Yeah.
To me, the first Transformers that came out in 2007. Oh my goodness. I mean, you worked with Steven Spielberg on that, and that was amazing. I mean, what scenes did you work for on that one exactly?
Okay, so in Transformers, I was at Digital Domain in Venice Beach, right, in LA area, right, and I we did like the smaller robots at Digital Domain. So we worked on Frenzy, and
Oh
yeah, you remember that, like the
yeah.
cool robot that's kind of just like hectic and
Yeah.
always getting
Yeah, it
in
popped out of the other one, yeah.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
great.
Yeah, him. And anyway, so we worked on a lot of those, and it was really fun just because he had so much character. And one of my jobs for a couple of days was to provide animation reference. And so me and Dan, who was the animation supervisor, uh, we built out a little table that was probably like 4 feet tall or 5 feet tall. It was my job to be Frenzy, the little robot. And so I would jump off the boxes, and then this is when he's
Going through the
inside of
airplane, that scene?
no, this is when in Hoover Dam was what we wanted the reference
Oh
for.
yeah, because
He
he's the
gets
one
it
that
like he
frees
gets
Megatron.
yeah, exactly. And so I was acting like a robot, just, and then we use that as reference inside of the film. It's actually the animator on that shot, I think, was Dan as well, which a
Uh,
different Dan. And
oh,
anyway, it was just kind of fun to see uh how much of that we just wanted to be real, right? And we wanted to
mhm.
focus on real life. And so we took all these motions of me acting like a robot and translated that into the film of Frenzy doing it. So you could kind of see a side by side comparison. And that was kind of the beginning of that one. And it was just, I mean, it was just so
That's
fun
so
to
cool.
animate all these robots and work with Michael Bay and
Yeah,
just kind of craft this story
Spielberg.
with him yeah, it was
Uh-huh.
just great.
Another amazing one at the time was Avatar, and the great James Cameron, who I actually had a pleasure to interview once. What was it
Oh,
like
cool.
working on that? Yeah. Oh yeah,
Okay, so James Cameron is, I mean, we know he's a genius, right?
yeah.
Like he's just so good. And it was really fun because he built out everything at Lightstorm Entertainment and had this what we call the template, and it was these kind of chess pieces of Neytiri and Jake and the Banshees and stuff, and he'd move it through, and it kind of became this theme throughout to be like, follow the template, and he had just the whole movie envisioned right there. That was just for us to rebuild and to make look just polished and awesome, and that was just a great experience for him to have that vision and know every single frame of his template. I remember one of these times we were talking about the scene where Jake and Neytiri hop on their Banshee and they're flying around through the Hallelujah Mountains, those floating mountains, right?
Yeah.
And the Banshee flies under a waterfall and hits his wing, and James Cameron's like, stop. Now, I think in the template, the Banshee was a little bit further out, so he didn't, hit the water. And we're like, oh, well, yeah, we just thought that'd kind of be a cool effect. And he's like, well, let's discuss this. And he starts going into the physics with Joe Lettieri, the supervisor, of how the tensile strength of the Banshee's wing would totally rip with the velocity of the water falling down. And we're like, okay, he knows every single frame of this movie and is so perfect. Like that. Yes. Okay. We'll move that Banshee over, and that just showed the craft and the amazing like detail and mind that he has for building just these epic movies.
Oh, okay. Last one. I'm a huge Marvel fan. He worked on the Avengers, the first Avengers movie. What can you tell us from that project? Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of fun. So the scene Engine or Hawkeye, right? Also from Modesto.
Oh,
George Lucas,
wow.
Hawkeye, and myself. Yeah, he went to the same high school as me.
That's cool.
But, he launches an arrow and hits
helicarrier,
the helicarrier and blows
Yeah.
up the engine. Right, Iron Man flies inside and he starts to speed up the blades and they get sucked out, right? Mm-hmm. So we're animating that, and Joss was like, guys, this just doesn't feel real. And we're like, well, I don't know, what is real, right? What is that when you're flying inside of a blade and it catches up and you get sucked under? Like, what does that look like? And so after a few iterations, the animation supervisor and I decided to go down to the motion capture stage and let's say, well, what would this look like if it was real? And so we set up a rope and got in the motion capture suit, right, and harnessed him to it. And then we had a guy that was designated to be the wind, and then another guy that was like the suction. And so we put a board up and the animation supervisor on a rope. And so we're sliding him up and down on this rope, and this guy was just slamming him against the board, like. And then as he got dropped, the suction guy grabbed his legs and pulled him under. And so we captured all that in the motion capture, converted that from motion capture data to animation, showed it to Joss, and he was like, guys, this feels real. This feels really real. And we're like, well, yeah, I guess it kind of was, Joss. So we got the animation approval, and that went through, and it's what's in the film today.
That's so cool. Well, thank you for sharing all those stories, man. I mean, the animators are really kind of the unsung heroes of these like big blockbuster movies that I'm very passionate about. So it's cool to find little stories like this. So, but now you are stepping out on your own. You're directing and created this new VR experience called D vs G, and it's basically David versus Goliath. But it's more than just fighting, the Goliath. I guess you play David and you fight like these wolves and bears and stuff. It's coming out, I guess, it's at a different VR platforms. It's on Steam now, which you mentioned. Talk about this. Where did this start? I always like hearing the filmmaker's journey, because if you didn't have the passion for doing this, you would have kind of given up a long time ago. So
yeah,
it's been like brewing for a long time,
What's been interesting is so about a few years ago, we were working with National Geographic and some archaeologists to recreate ancient Jerusalem. And it kind of create like a living museum, and they used a portion of that in an exhibit in DC. And we got contacted about by Bill Isler, who's the founder and CEO of Virtuous VR Gaming. And he was like, I'd love to see this Jerusalem that you made in VR. And we're like, well, sure, come on out. So we looked at it, and to understand, like, the ancient city of Jerusalem is buried underground, and
Yeah.
the what was once the temple there is now like the Dome of the Rock and that Temple Mountain, and the city of David is modernized and all this stuff, right? So
Yeah.
um, Bill came out and we started looking at stuff, and he was like, this is really cool. You've created a living museum of an ancient city. And we're like, yeah, that's really what we're focusing on, is bringing the past to life in a really immersive way. And he's like, well, what would you want to do next? And I thought, well, one of the cool stories from this era, like the biggest underdog story ever, is David and
Yeah.
Goliath.
Yeah.
And I mean, just this little, I always envision as this like little teeny boy who's skinny like me, and then just Goliath, who is like a tree, right, and a rhino combined.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to tell that story, and I thought, hey, that would be really cool to, rather than a living museum, let's put these individuals and the players in one of these stories. And so we crafted David versus Goliath. You're armed with a sling or a slingshot, depending on the level of difficulty that you want, and you kind of go through this story of protecting your sheep, going and chasing the lost sheep into the lion's den, and then your brothers need some supplies on the battlefield, so you take a shortcut through the forest and run across this bear. And then if you defeat the bear, you end up at the battlefield and face it in VR, like a 14-foot Goliath.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. How long have you been working on this project?
So we've been working on it just over a year
Uh-huh.
now. And we have it's kind of like the boss battles, kind of akin to Mike Tyson, where you come across
Oh
the wolves
yeah.
and you figure out the patterns and stuff, and then you beat them, and then so it takes you a few times to actually figure out the patterns, and then you've got to execute on it, and you beat these bosses. And we also added 15 campaign levels where
Oh,
you can
cool.
go through and test your skill and speed with the weapons, and make your way to the top of the leaderboard.
I love that. And so the one thing I understand for VR though, it's the hard thing about getting distributed across all platforms is each one's very different. I guess I don't know if it's a coding or something, because if you go to Oculus, it's different from PlayStation VR. Is that correct? Is that why it's like kind of the hold up getting distributed at all platforms?
Yeah, each of these platforms requires a little different specs, right?
Okay.
And they require, Oculus wants the key art to look like this and have the title like this, and PlayStation wants that a little bit different. So even from the art side to the actual performance and the frame rate issues with the headsets, ranging from 72 a refresh rate to like 90, and so you've got to hit these different parameters on each of those. And so it's kind of tweaking everything and optimizing it to work on all those individual platforms.
Gotcha. All right. So he says it's on Steam now. Is there like a website or social media wise that can stay up to date with this, and when it's going to be available for, like I said, Oculus and PlayStation VR?
Of course, yeah. So dvgthegame.com is the website. You can go on there, kind of read the FAQs if you're interested about the story of David, or just kind of getting into VR. This is a
Mhm.
perfect game for beginners to VR. We made it really simple. It's really fun. It's got natural movement in there, and so yeah, check it out, or go to DVG the game on any of the social platforms.
Gotcha. And lastly, are you into social media? We can follow your journey going forward.
Sure, yeah. You can follow me at Immersive History, and just feel free to reach out and touch base there. And I'd love to connect with anybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking your time to talk to me. Congrats on the new VR game.
Yeah, thanks, Steven. I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun.
Thanks.